You've been very busy on the site, Jack, as always, covering, especially when John's away, but, covering just the day to day in general. You covered AEW Redemption for
Mhm.
us.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like the discussion around most AEW pay-per-views for a while has been pretty easy because they've been pretty great shows start to finish. And, even like the little complaints that we've had for past pay-per-views, like the runtime and stuff like that, those have been things that have been kind of like, well, that is an issue, but it's still a really good show. So, we can brush that to the side. I feel like a lot of the discourse around last night's show has been particularly interesting because I would still rate it as a very enjoyable show, but it was just below that sort of gold standard that they've set and were continually meeting earlier this year. And it's forced some more critical conversations, I think, about the AEW pay-per-views, and it's been really interesting to hear what people have had to say about it.
Yeah, I would say gold standard is probably, a great way of describing like their year thus far.
Yeah.
They've certainly achieved a different status and a different level. It'd be interesting to maybe consider like if you like put the show up against like maybe some of their prior years, like where it would necessarily rank, or what sort of reactions it would provide people. I will say though, personally for me, I do think a lot more work could have been put into its relevance. This was a show that reportedly was originally scheduled to have MJF versus Kenny Omega. For whatever reason, maybe injury related, maybe not, they decided to push that match up. I'm sure also, for the benefit of like Wembley ticket sales as well. That left a hole for this particular show, and therefore I was very curious to see what Tony Khan would do to satisfy it, because he, I think, has been known to, very like successfully over deliver for these pay-per-views. What did you think about Kevin Knight being Kenny Omega's opponent as the main event of the show?
I mean, obviously, it's a tough spot to build that match because we all knew going into this, nothing's going to get in the way of Kenny Omega facing Will Ospreay at All in Wembley Stadium. So, like, when you have that sort of inevitable result and knowing how it's going to play out, it does make it a little hard to sell that match. But just the performance itself and how Kevin Knight did, he completely lived up to expectations and showed that even though he is not in the main event picture really right now, I mean, he had a short little program for this pay-per-view. He is someone who, once he is put in that position, will be ready for it. And I think that, there are parallels to this and the match that Fletcher had last year for the title that showed, okay, well, Fletcher is not someone who is orbiting that main event picture right now, but when the time comes, he will be ready for it and just completely live up to that standard.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about this show is that, like, a lot of the opinions surrounding it, I think you have to really include recency bias. Like, I think anyone who is putting this up as like one of the worst AEW pay-per-views of all time, like that's not true at all. I think. I just think that their hit rate has been so consistent this year that a show that had some, rough points in it, that maybe overstayed its welcome in the runtime, including the pre-show being nearly 6 hours, and being a more transitional pay-per-view as All In is next month. I think having, a much quieter pay-per-view compared to the ones we've been so accustomed to, people, weren't used to that sort of drop. So I think it was, interesting because I think since the start of the year they've just been on fire with pay-per-views, and with some of this they were on fire. I think the main event was great. I really enjoyed the women's title match. Bandito and Fletcher was just incredible, and I still think that Bandito is so overdue for something much more important than being the guy who comes up short in these huge opportunities, because he's been that guy way too many times now.
It's almost
But
like his story now, the guy who
yeah,
like is able to, get into these like matches on pay-per-view. But I need to know when he actually has won a singles pay-per-view match, or when the last time that was. Cause yeah, like, and I think that would be like a fine story, if not for the fact that he is ROH champion.
yes.
I mean, that to me, on the one hand, of course, you understand why Tony would like, he is like the guy kind of holding up, other than Athena, the person holding up that brand. But at the same time, to have him constantly lose in these like high profile matches, it's not going unnoticed, you know? And, you know, we're talking about AEW where like you don't necessarily have to win in order to gain favor. He's certainly shown that, you know, you have to wrestle. You can have the best matches and be more over than anybody. But I do think it's gotten to a point now where it's almost a little bit like too predictable, especially when you have a storyline or lack thereof, you know, leading into one of these matches, and it being so obvious that somebody like Fletcher was going to beat Bandito. But I wonder if they can turn that into like now his new identity, and Bandito actually searching for his like first pay-per-view win.
I think it can be an issue
sometime, not ever, but yeah.
Right. I think it can be an issue sometimes, especially with the depth of the AEW roster, that there are some really stellar talents who you just know can thrive in that, you know, big position. And you know that the people in the company look at them as that sort of high level wrestler, but they just haven't found that positioning for them to actually sneak into one of those opportunities yet. So few people can be in those positions at once, right? So it's just frustrating that, you know, Bandito is clearly a world-class talent, and you know, we're a year removed from that sort of match of the year contender against Takeshita, and he's sort of in the exact same position that he was back then.
What do you see him doing at All In?
I mean, I don't know. It's hard to sort of book All In right now. You know, other than the matches that we do know for it, we don't have much time. But I mean, he's kind of out of a program right now. So
I'm sensing something with Brodito. Like, I mean, you know, they are like giving them significant wins in the lead up to like, certainly this show. And you have a lot of tag teams that aren't going to be involved in the world title match, of course. So I can imagine some version of like a number one contenders match that may take place.
Yeah, and the Brodito combo was separated for long enough that there was a freshness to having them back together in a real significant program. So that would be fun.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Any other things you'd like to maybe, you know, take us through about the redemption discussion, Jack?
Yeah. Painmaker Jericho being one of the more interesting parts of the night. I did not have that on my bingo card for the evening. And, you know, I already kind of mentioned it earlier, and I don't mean to harp on it because I know people are sick of this discussion, and you guys touched on it last night too. But, you know, some of these shows, there is a, I like the photo accompanied here. You know, these shows can be real marathons. And when you are batting 1,000 with your matches, which they've done a few times this year already, it's hard for that sort of runtime to be felt that significantly. But then when you do have a show like this, where there were some, you know, matches that didn't deliver as much as people expected, and there were some matches that the crowd just wasn't into, I think then that runtime is significantly, like, you feel it so much more.
Yeah. It certainly felt that way to me. Like, I have seen some comments about people, like, as always, whenever we might complain about a crowd, like maybe a few people will say, I was there, it was loud as hell, what are you talking about? You know, like, so maybe there's some element of I don't know, improper miking or something, but I felt it was like, certainly in watching the live experience, it was very noticeable how quiet certain portions of the match were. I wouldn't say that about this match though. This was one of the highlights, this Paymaker Tommaso Ciampa match. I thought it was certainly exceeded my expectations, and I think was worthy of, I think, the pay-per-view alter ego billing.
Yeah, I think it showed that there's still value to having Jericho around and having him in matches, because I think some people have seen that, you know, over the years his skill has regressed to a certain extent, but, you know, you can still put him in these gimmicky matches with and you can find ways to make him useful on the show. I can't say that start to finish I've been the most intrigued by this Ciampa rivalry, but, you know, their matches have been, you know, pretty good at worst. So, you know, I think that alone sort of shows the value of having a big name like Jericho still around. The crowd was quiet. I think the Bell Center is a gigantic venue, so that is a challenge when you're there. But I don't think it was the miking this time around.
Yeah. Any other highs or lows of the show that stood out to you?
Thinking about highs.
The dog collar match. Give me your thoughts. Give me a full breakdown.
It was bad. I mean, it was it was at a rough point in the show. It was a pretty plodding match. I think they were going for an element of drama in front of a crowd that I don't think really understood the drama of this match and the history between these guys. And listen,
even if you did know the history, I mean, I know the history, but like, what exactly, like, what was dramatic about the match?
Yeah, no, it's true. What's frustrating is, like, everybody in that match are very talented wrestlers, and I think that the Dogs, they have some fun stuff on TV, and I think they're talented wrestlers, but I really think they haven't found their footing in AEW so far. And credit to them. I think most of their matches on pay-per-view so far have been these sort of small storylines that are barely built up on TV and then thrown, as a transitional match on the pay-per-view. So it's been hard for them to get a good spot in AEW so far. But I didn't like that match at all.
I do think like there's enough talent there, and I think Jay White is hot enough as like a character that I do think that they will be given a chance to redeem themselves. I mean, what was missing about the match was the violence. I think you would attach to it, and clearly
Yes.
they were not allowed to use blood, and I thought that really impacted things a great deal. But even creatively, their usage of the chains, just like I mean, it was more awkward than it was creative. So I look forward to seeing, like, I think they'll have another match. The feud will obviously continue. I hope that they have, like, certainly the expectation will be a much better match than this.
I think they were kind of set up for failure when the commentary was talking about how they were expecting it to be a bloody match, only for that to not happen. I mean, people were waiting for this for it to pick up in its violence, and that simply never happened. I am curious what the reasoning behind that is, because like you said, I agree. It seems like an intentional move for there to be no blood in this match. But then the Painmaker match, we saw a ton of blood and a lot of gimmicks and weapons and things like that. So it's a very puzzling match all around. So that was the low point of it. I think I still believe that, despite it being, the weakest pay-per-view of the year for AEW, it was still an enjoyable show. And they're going to rebound with All In next month, their biggest show of the year. And, I think this is one of those things where by the end of the year, we'll probably be forgetting about this show because not only was it not disastrous, but it also wasn't that significant. It'll just be a footnote in 2026.
So, I guess you can question whether or not it increased your interest in All In, but it certainly didn't take away your interest in All In, because if anything, it felt like All In was the more important destination. Well, so much more important than this one that this one almost seemed a little bit forgotten about. But in turn, it still makes All In feel like the, big show that everybody has to watch. So yeah, still very, very excited for it. I'm really interested to see like what role Moxley continues to play in this whole Omega, Osprey thing, and how much they will have Kenny lean into this sort of paranoid heel that they ended the show with tonight, or last night. So I'm very intrigued by the storytelling in the main event.
Yeah, no, there's definitely much more story to go with that one. They're not circling sort of the same tropes every single week, like we've seen with some storylines in wrestling. There's a lot to sort of uncover with that one, and I don't know what direction they're going to go. So it has me intrigued, and of course, it's expected that they're probably going to deliver with an amazing match at the end as well. So a lot to look forward to on that front.
It's July on the Post Wrestling Cafe, and that means our extensive G1 coverage begins starting July 11th. We're going to have reviews of every single G1 card right up to and including the finals in the middle of August. Plus, Rewind Away takes a look at 2 episodes of Heels. We're also going to be going back to 2005 for a review of WrestleMania 21, and it is the start of our double shot episodes covering this season of Dark Side of the Ring. Plus, we are going to dive into the 3rd season of WWE Unreal. All that and so much more can be yours by signing up to the Post Wrestling Cafe. It gets you XL editions of Rewind to Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown, Collision Course on a weekly basis, MCU later, and so much more.